Another question I got for you is, or just to ponder with you, it's being, you and I, being white and being, have had shamanic initiations and had to find our own way. And the whole, what does it mean to be white and to be a shaman? Because a lot of people think, oh, well, that's just indigenous cultures. And let's talk a little bit about that.
I think it's like the reawakening of a part of our heritage, our spiritual heritage that we have covered over, and we don't have a language for it. We don't have names for these practices. People have made a stab at names, of coming up with names and Celtic names and things, approximations. But still, I think that we are, on the one hand, we're reawakening a heritage, and we have to find a name for it. And it's a shamanism is a generally recognized term for a series of practices which have certain commonalities. That is a working term that we can use with respect and carefully. That I think that is we have the right, I think, to use that term as white people rediscovering our traditions.
In our own inherent connection to the sacredness of the land and of the cosmos.
Absolutely.
Because I think it's the birthright of all people, and for us, there was a time at which it was generally practiced, but then it was sort of beaten out of us. And so for us, it's a rediscovering of our origins directly from the land. And but people have confusion. I think if they hear the word shaman, they think Native American, and then they think you're doing co-opting. But really, we have our own origin points, and it's important for us to own it, to claim it, and to step forward with it in a way that has very high impeccability. And I think that that's something that's demanded of us, because even more so, because after the our origin culture got whipped out of us, then we went out and whipped it out of other people, and so it requires a very high level of impeccability, because we can't. We can learn from other cultures, but we can't be stealers of cultures.
No, and I think that when you go, being in Scotland and where I lived on the East Coast, you could stand in the land. And when I was a little boy, I even remember looking up and seeing what they call the paps of Fife. And paps are breasts, and you look up and you see these paps, these huge breasts in the land, this nourishment, this feminine earth. And when I close to the yew tree, there was Traprain Law, which is a volcanic hill with a flat top, where there was a tribe called the Votadini tribe there. There's Iron Age earthworks all around you, and you stand there, you immerse yourself in that land, and you begin to feel that in your blood.
Yeah.
You begin to feel that. We don't have the names for it anymore, or we have approximations of it, but when we feel it in our bodies, when we feel it in our bones, when we feel it in our blood, that's when we can say that's when we can fully say we have something that is ours.
I remember I had this amazing dream once where I was riding across the moors with my daughter on horses, and we came to a burial mound. And I entered into the burial mound, and one of my ancestors was laying there, and she was a shaman, or that's the word we use now, right? Which is, of course, a Siberian word, but whatever the original word might have been. And I put my hand underneath her head, under her cranium, and I was holding her head, and I was wiggling my fingers kind of at the top of the neck where the occiput would be, and all this gold was falling out of her skull into my hands. And she began to speak to me, and she was telling me, "Here, let me give you my wisdom, my power, and the power of your lineage." And it came symbolically in the form of gold.
That's really powerful. And the gold thing, during my initiation, there was a lot of gold as well. Seeing my own head on a gold disc, gold filaments that I had to pass through pass through my body. It really. An old lady with a goat, an old woman at the tree, used to appear on the tree. She had a molten gold globe, orb, clutched in her hands, which she thrust. She could hardly contain it. She came towards me, and she thrust it into my chest. And so gold, really is a very.
Now, when you had that vision, were your eyes open or were they closed?
My eyes were closed, but the vision that I had was more real than the way I was experiencing the world with my eyes open at that point in my life. I could not really see the world with my eyes at that point. I was incapable of doing that. I was just totally, entirely disoriented.
Right, so the energy and awareness was completely inner, and in that inner place, you became the cauldron, the Athanor, the pressure cooker.
The pressure cooker.
The pressure cooker of transformation.
The chip pan of no. Yeah. Let's not go there.
Okay.
Yeah. By the way, for those of you, Sylvia and I get together, this is always what happens.
Oh, it's a good thing. It's good.
Yeah.
It's good to have friends who understand that we have a similar yet very different experience, and get to compare and contrast notes, and really, it's the shamanic connection to the land is as old as the land and as old as glorified monkeys that we are, and whatever it is. And yet we're starting something new, which is also very exciting. I mean, it's new for us, and it's newer for our culture, and there's a lot of misconceptions, and a lot of people think that if you're not practicing Christianity, you must be practicing Satanism or something. It's this polarized thing, and we're outside of that paradigm. We're outside of that.
Absolutely. And I think when we look back, there's people now who are, anybody who hasn't read would be interested in. There's a man called Peter Kingsley, who's an Englishman. He's been writing a lot about Parmenides, who was really before Plato, and how his work was distorted as being the foundations for logic and rationality. In fact, when you look back at his poems, and Kingsley argues this, he was talking about altered states consciousness as an incubatory techniques, as being the foundation of knowledge, like an aesthetic knowledge, something that where laws, where meaning is discovered in the other world and brought to this world. So the foundations of our culture, to some extent, being brought from the other world, which is something many of us don't like to, or our culture does not like to would not like to want to admit. It has to be seen as very rational, very head-based. But actually, when you look deeper and you scrape away at the surface, foundations of our Western culture are actually based on incubatory techniques, out-of-body states, and altered consciousness.
Right. Well, it's about the experience, and Einstein said that knowledge is experience.
Absolutely.
Everything else is just information. Yeah. So the incubatory techniques are the living experience. It's not an idea. It's not a thought. Like, you might think about it afterwards or whatnot, but it's about something that you feel and that you know from the inside out, not something that you read in a book. Not to say one can't learn from books. Books can open your mind to something new, and so then you can say, oh, well, I want to have that experience. But until you've really experienced it, that's when the knowledge becomes alive and becomes actually really usable.
Yeah, you claim it. I mean, if you look at the bardic tradition, if you look at the poems that are credited to Taliesin and things like that, you have your experiences, and then you go to these things, and you find clarifications. You find empowerment through your experiences being reflected back at you in the bardic text.
It becomes like a mirror.
Yeah, it becomes like a mirror, and that's very powerful. That is enlivened. These are archetypes, and codified initiations that become realized